Nolan Cassidy had never believed in miracles, but standing at the edge of a 100-acre ranch he bought for $1, he began to question everything he thought he understood. The gate groaned as he opened it, Oldwood protesting like it still remembered better days. The field stretched wide under a ruthless sun, and the house ahead looked like something that had been left behind by time. Dust clung to every window pane. It was supposed to be empty. He was promised that. 3 hours later, with the front door open and a smell of old timber curling through the air, Nolan heard footsteps upstairs. Soft, careful, deliberate. He froze mid-step. His hand still rested on the brass handle, cold and solid. Carter, the man at the land office, had sworn nobody had lived there in years. Said it like a secret that made him nervous. Yet someone was upstairs, and they weren't trying to hide. A figure appeared at the top of the stairs. A young woman, early 30s maybe, dark hair falling loosely to her shoulders. Her dress was plain, sun-faded and worn at the edges. She didn't scream, didn't retreat, just stood there, watching him like she'd been waiting for him to show up. "You must be the new owner," she said. Her voice didn't tremble. She wasn't angry or surprised, just tired. "I'm Iris Quaid. I've been looking after this place." He blinked. Looking after it? For who? She descended one step at a time, graceful, like she knew the exact pressure each board could take. Nolan didn't move. His mind reeled. Carter had said nothing about anyone living here. Yet here she was, with no sign of guilt or trespassing in her face. "For me, mostly," she said, "and for the land. Boone Carter doesn't know everything about this place. Some things go deeper than paper records." She walked to a window and pulled back the curtain. Outside, the land rolled endlessly under the sky. The wind pressed low across the grass like a secret being whispered. "I've been here 3 years. This place saved me when I had nothing left. I kept the roof from falling in, cleaned the well, mended the fences. It's taken care of me, and I took care of it." Nolan tried to find anger, but what he felt was confusion. He'd spent 5 years saving for land, living in backrooms, working 14-hour days with splinters in his hands and empty nights. And now he owned a home that came with a stranger whose presence was unmentioned, unexpected, and oddly grounded. "Why did Carter sell it for so cheap?" he asked. Iris hesitated. For the first time, something shifted in her expression. The weight she'd been carrying started to show. "Because he's not the only one who knows I'm here," she said. "And the others, they're not coming to offer anything. They're coming to take." Nolan set his satchel on the old table beside him. His heart was drumming now. "Take what?" She looked out again, then back to him. "Something they think belongs to them. They've been hunting me for years." "Did you take it?" Her eyes didn't flinch. "Yes, but it was mine before they ever touched it. My father's gold claim. He died in a mine collapse. They showed up after with forged papers, stole everything we had. I took back what was ours, the original deed, maps, proof of ownership. It's all hidden. If I could get them to court, it'd be over. But surviving to get there, that's been the real trial." A faint rumble interrupted her. Hoofbeats. They both turned to the window. 3 riders in the distance, moving along the trail. Not close enough to see clearly, but not far enough to ignore. "Is that them?" Nolan asked. She squinted. "No, but those horses are too fast for casual, too slow for urgent. They're looking for something, or someone." He felt the earth shift beneath his carefully laid plans. He came for peace, for a clean start. But now, in this quiet, dust-heavy house with a stranger and 3 shadows riding closer, Nolan knew he'd stepped into something far more tangled than he'd ever intended. Nolan's chest tightened as he watched the riders grow larger on the trail. Iris had moved back from the window, her hands clasped in front of her. He could tell she was trying to stay calm, but her eyes followed every movement outside. "I should go," she said, voice low. "I've brought enough trouble to this place. You don't need to be part of it." "Where would you even go?" he asked. It surprised him how fast the concern had come. Just hours ago, she'd been a stranger. Now he couldn't imagine her just disappearing. She didn't answer. The silence said enough. She had nowhere left to run. The riders kept coming. Not fast, but steady. Nolan could see now they were men. Hard faces, Big hats. Wide shoulders. They weren't here to sell feed or borrow tools. How long before the real trouble finds you here? He asked. If those men are who I think they are, she said, then they already have. The three riders finally stopped, maybe 50 yards from the house. They didn't shout or wave, just sat there watching. That one in front, Iris whispered, her voice tight. That's Wade Harper. He works for the Maddox brothers. Nolan had heard of them. Men with money, power, and a reputation for making people disappear. If they sent Harper, they meant business. The riders spread out slowly, forming a loose half-circle around the house. Nolan's mind raced. These men weren't guessing. They knew Iris was here. And if they knew, then whatever she'd taken from them was worth more than land or gold. It was about control. What exactly did you take? He asked. Iris knelt by the fireplace, then pulled up a loose floorboard with practiced hands. From underneath, she pulled out a leather pouch and a rolled set of papers. She opened them on the table. Nolan leaned in, seeing careful hand-drawn maps with gold veins marked in dark ink. It was more than a claim. It was a treasure map. My father mapped everything before he died, Iris said. The Maddox brothers found out too late and thought he'd hidden the good stuff. He did. Right here. Nolan stared at the maps. It was worth a fortune. No wonder they were chasing her. A sharp whistle from outside made them both freeze. Wade Harper had stepped off his horse and was walking toward the house. His hand rested on his gun belt, easy and slow. His men stayed mounted, eyes scanning the property. Iris Quaid, Harper shouted. We know you're in there. Let's settle this like civilized people. Nolan looked at her. She looked pale but calm. There's a back way out, she said quickly. Through the kitchen, down to the creek. You can leave while they're focused on the front. What about you? I'm done running, she said softly. Maybe it's time I faced them. He stared at her. She meant it. She was going to give herself up so he could walk away. Just like that. But Nolan had made up his mind. Maybe he didn't know everything, but he knew enough. These men weren't here to talk. No, he said. This is my land now. I didn't invite anyone. He stepped outside, standing tall on the porch. The sun behind him cast his shadow long across the boards. His heart was pounding, but he kept his voice steady. This is private property, he called out. You and your men need to move along. Harper's smile was slow and dangerous. Looks like the lady found herself a protector. I don't see any legal papers, Nolan said. Far as I know, everything on this land belongs to me. Harper chuckled. Legal papers? Come on now. She's been squatting here for years. Probably found something that doesn't belong to her. Inside the house, Nolan could hear quiet movement. Iris must be hiding the documents. He needed to keep Harper busy. Harper took another step. Why don't you call her out? Let's talk like reasonable people. She's not here. Nolan lied, trying to sound sure. Harper's eyes narrowed. Funny. My friend over there says he saw two figures in the window. One of the riders tipped his hat, rifle resting across his saddle. Old houses, Nolan said. Shadows play tricks. Harper wasn't convinced. Or maybe you're covering for a thief. That kind of loyalty makes a man look suspicious. Nolan didn't answer. The air was thick now. The silence felt heavy. Harper pulled out a pocket watch. I don't like being lied to, he said. Last chance. Behind him, the house had gone completely quiet. Iris was either hidden or preparing to do something desperate. Harper snapped his pocket watch shut with a sharp click. You knew, he said, voice cold. You bought this place knowing she was here. Maybe she promised you a piece of what she stole. You're wrong, Nolan said. I bought this place this morning. First time I've stepped foot on it. Harper glanced back at his men. One of them shifted in his saddle, fingers twitching near the trigger. Nolan felt the heat rising on his neck. They were planning something. Here's what's going to happen, Harper said. You're going to step aside. We're going to search this house. If we find what we're looking for, we'll be on our way. If you stop us, you'll be in the ground before sunset. Nolan's mouth was dry. He looked down at the steps, then back at Harper's steady hand resting on his gun. And if I say no? Nolan asked. Harper's smile faded. Then we search anyway, and you won't be around to complain. Behind him, the front door creaked. Nolan's heart stopped. Iris stepped out onto the porch. She wore different clothes now, riding pants and a jacket, and a small pack hung from her shoulder. Her chin was up, but her hand shook slightly. Enough, she said. He has nothing to do with this, Harper. It's between us. Harper looked pleased, like a hunter who'd finally caught what he was tracking. That's more like it. Come on down. Let's talk. I will, she said, but only if you let him go. No guns. No threats. Just me. Nolan turned to her. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do, she said quietly. You already did more than anyone should have. Harper clapped his hands. See? Easy. Now about those papers. What papers? Iris said. Harper's voice was slow and patient. The ones that prove our employer owns the Quaid mine. The ones your father hid before his accident. My father died in a cave-in caused by your boss's unsafe tunnels. Iris snapped. There were no papers. The smile slipped off Harper's face. Don't lie to me, girl. We know they're here, and we'll tear this house apart to find them. Iris didn't move, but Nolan saw her fingers tighten at her sides. He knew those papers were still inside, and if they were found, she had nothing left. Then came a sound neither of them expected. More hoofbeats, fast and loud, from the east trail. Harper turned, alarmed. Johnny, he called to his sharp-eyed rider. How many? Johnny squinted into the dust. 4, maybe 5. Can't tell yet, but they're riding hard. Harper swore under his breath. This changes things, he muttered. Then louder. We're taking her and the papers. Now, before things get complicated. I told you, Iris said. I don't have any papers. Search the house. Harper barked. Nolan stepped forward. You're not going anywhere near my house. Harper's gun was out before Nolan could react. The cold barrel pressed against Nolan's forehead. Last warning, Harper growled. Move or die. The riders from the east came closer now. Nolan could see their formation, disciplined, focused. Not bandits. Not travelers. One of them shouted, Wade Harper, step away from those people. Harper's expression shifted. For the first time, he looked worried. Iris's eyes narrowed. Friends of yours? Harper gritted his teeth. Sheriff Bennett. Someone must have sent word ahead. The sheriff and his men rode up fast, surrounding Harper's group in a wide arc. Nolan saw badges gleaming on their vests. Sheriff Bennett was lean, older, his face hardened by years of dealing with men like Harper. Drop your weapons, he called out. Nobody needs to die. Harper didn't move his gun. Maybe not, he called back. Depend if you let justice take its course. Justice? Bennett laughed. That what you call hunting down a woman across 3 states? She stole from my employer, Harper said. We're here for property, not violence. You mean the Maddox brothers, the sheriff replied, disgust clear in his voice. I've seen their justice. Tension filled the air. Harper's men were outnumbered, but Harper still had the gun pressed to Nolan's head. One wrong move, and everything would explode. Here's what's going to happen, Harper said. Miss Quaid and I'll talk inside. Anyone interferes, he dies. The sheriff raised a hand, signaling his deputies to wait. No one moved. The silence was thick. Harper looked at Iris again. You want the documents? She said. Fine. They're under the floorboard, wrapped in oiled cloth. By the fireplace. Nolan's heart sank. She'd given up her only defense to protect him. Harper's face lit up. Johnny, he said, go get them. Be careful. She's tricky. Johnny dismounted and started forward. But the sheriff's voice rang out. I wouldn't do that, he warned. Johnny, I've got a warrant here. For Wade Harper. Murder, robbery, conspiracy. Anyone who helps him is an accessory. Johnny froze on the step. Murder. Harper snapped. Shut up and get those papers. But Nolan could hear the fear now. Harper was unraveling. The sheriff's voice stayed calm but firm. The murder of Thomas Quaid, he said. I've got a witness. Saw Harper and 2 other men rig the mine supports right before it collapsed. Iris's breath caught. Her hand flew to her mouth. Someone saw what happened to my father. Sheriff Bennett nodded. Old Pete Hardin. He was working a claim upstream. He saw Harper and the Maddox boys tampering with the beams. Said they knew exactly when your father would be inside. They wanted that mine. Harper's face turned pale, but his gun didn't move. That drunk can't hold up in court. Maybe not alone, the sheriff said. But paired with those papers, the original maps, the deed, there's enough to hang all 3 of you. Nolan felt Harper's hand shaking against his forehead. It wasn't just bluff anymore. The man was desperate, and desperation made people dangerous. "Johnny," Harper shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "Get those papers now." But Johnny was already backing away from the porch, hands in the air. "I didn't sign up for a hanging," he muttered. The third rider, younger than the rest, suddenly turned his horse and bolted toward the trees. Dust kicked up behind him as he disappeared into the brush. Harper was alone now. His breathing turned quick and shallow. His eyes darted between Nolan, Iris, and the sheriff. He looked like a man backed into a corner with no way out. "This isn't over," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. Then louder, "Even if you take me in, the Maddox brothers won't stop. Those documents are worth too much. She'll never be safe." The sheriff slowly dismounted, stepping forward. "That's tomorrow's problem. Today, you need to put down that gun." Harper's hand trembled. Nolan saw it. Iris saw it. Everyone did. The danger was still real, but now it had fear behind it. Then Harper broke. He shoved Nolan aside, stepping back and swinging his gun toward the sheriff. But the movement was wild and off balance. Nolan dropped to the ground just as the first shot cracked through the air. The deputies reacted fast. 2 shots rang out. Harper stumbled, staggered, then fell hard into the dirt. His gun spun away. The whole standoff ended in seconds. Only the smell of gunpowder and the echo of gunfire remained. "Everyone okay?" Sheriff Bennett called out, still aiming his weapon. Nolan rose slowly, ribs aching. "I'm good," he said, brushing dirt off his coat. Iris came down the porch steps, her face pale but steady. She looked at Harper's body, then back at the sheriff. "Is he dead?" A deputy knelt beside Harper, checking. "Got him in the chest," he said. "He's gone." The sheriff holstered his weapon. His face softened as he turned to Iris. "Miss Quaid, I'm sorry it took this long to get justice for your father. If you're willing to testify, we can finally put the Maddox brothers where they belong." She nodded slowly. "I've waited 3 years to tell someone who would listen." She looked back at the house, then at Nolan. Everything's inside, the maps, the deed, the letters. Everything they tried to bury with him. 2 hours later, the sun had started its slow fall behind the mountains. The lawmen loaded Harper's body and rode off with a promise to return for Iris and the evidence. The house stood quiet again, but the silence was different now. It wasn't heavy anymore. Nolan and Iris stood on the porch, side by side. He looked at her. "So," he said, trying to sound casual, "once this is all settled, I guess you'll be heading out?" She didn't answer right away. Then she looked at him with a small smile. "Where would I go? You've been here 3 years. Seems like you've done your part." She glanced toward the horizon, the grass waving in the wind. "It's your ranch now," she said. He shrugged. "Bought it for $1, right?" she said, stepping closer. "And it came with someone to help run it. This land is big enough for 2 people who know how to work." Nolan looked out across the fields. He thought about the lonely years he'd spent dreaming of a home, a life built by hand. He had always pictured himself building it alone. Now maybe not. He turned back to her, hand outstretched. "Partners." Iris reached for his hand without hesitation. "Partners." They walked back inside together, the sky darkening behind them. The past wasn't gone, but it no longer had to be carried alone. The next morning, the ranch was quiet again, but it felt different. Nolan stood on the porch sipping coffee from a tin cup, watching the fog lift from the fields. The house behind him was still, except for the sound of Iris moving in the kitchen. It was peaceful for now. He thought back to everything that had happened the day before. He had come to this place for a fresh start, to escape the noise and weight of life. Instead, he'd walked into someone else's fight. But now, somehow, it felt like his too. Iris stepped outside, wiping her hands on a towel. She looked tired but calm. "Coffee's still hot if you want more." "I'm good," he said. "Can't drink much more without shaking." She smiled a little. Then her face grew serious. "Thank you for not walking away. You didn't give me much choice," he said. Hard to ignore a woman with a gun to her past, and 3 men ready to pull triggers. "I mean it," she said. "Most people would have run." He looked at her closely. "And what about you? Are you going to run when the court stuff is over?" Iris leaned against the porch rail. "I don't know. Depends on what's left." Nolan nodded slowly. "Well, if you stay, We'll need to fix the back fence. One of Harper's men rode through it when he ran. I saw, she said. We'll need new posts. He paused at her word. He hadn't asked for a partner, but hearing it felt right. They worked through the morning, fixing what was broken, gathering the documents. Iris laid everything out on the table. Maps, deeds, letters her father had written before he died. Sheriff Bennett had said he'd be back soon. The courthouse was expecting them. While sorting through the papers, Nolan noticed one map marked differently. A red X with notes in the corner. He pointed to it. What's this? That's the main vein, she said. My father found it just before it happened. It's the richest part. The Maddox brothers never found it. Nolan studied the markings. This could change everything. She nodded. If we get that in front of a judge, it won't just prove the claim. It'll bury the Maddox name. There was a knock at the door. Nolan froze, then moved to the window carefully. His shoulders relaxed. It's Bennett. The sheriff stepped inside, hat in hand. Morning. Brought the official escort and the papers for court. You ready? Iris nodded, gathering the documents. Nolan helped her pack them safely. The sheriff looked at the two of them, something soft in his eyes. You two make a good team, he said. Iris glanced at Nolan, then back at the sheriff. We've had a rough start. The strong ones always do, the sheriff replied. They rode into town that afternoon. A quiet group. Nolan rode beside Iris, the sheriff just ahead. The road was long and dry, but the sky was clear. For the first time in a long time, Nolan didn't feel like he was running from anything. At the courthouse, things moved slow. Statements were taken. Documents were reviewed. Lawyers asked questions. Iris answered every one of them, calm and steady. Nolan sat beside her, ready to speak if needed, but mostly he watched. She didn't need saving. She just needed someone to stand beside her. When it was over, the judge didn't give a full ruling yet, but he made one thing clear. The documents were real. The claim was likely valid, and the Maddox brothers would need to answer for a lot more than just a forged signature. That night, they returned to the ranch. The ride back felt easier, the air softer. At the gate, Nolan stopped his horse and looked out at the land. Iris pulled up beside him. What? She asked. He shook his head. Still can't believe I own this place. You don't, she said, half smiling. We do, remember? He looked at her and nodded. Right. They walked their horses back to the stable. The sun dipped low behind the hills. The quiet wasn't empty anymore. It felt earned. Later, while sitting on the porch, Nolan asked the question that had been sitting in his mind all day. You really think the Maddox brothers will stop? No, she said. They've lost too much now. They'll come again. He stared out at the land. Then we'd better be ready. The next few days passed in a quiet that wasn't quite peace. Nolan and Iris worked side by side, mending what was left of the ranch after the standoff. There were bullet holes in the porch post, a cracked window in the kitchen, burn marks on the wall near the fireplace where someone's match had gotten too close to the curtains during the search. It all needed fixing, and they did it together, one problem at a time. Each day started early and ended late. There wasn't much talk, just the rhythm of shared work. They didn't need to say much. The silence between them had changed. It wasn't awkward anymore. It felt like trust. At night, they sat on the porch with mugs of coffee or just silence. Nolan had never thought sharing a porch with someone could feel like safety. But here they were, one evening, as they watched the last of the sunlight disappear behind the hills. Iris spoke. You ever lose someone? She asked, voice low. Nolan nodded. My wife. Years ago. She got sick, and we couldn't afford the doctor she needed. I tried everything. Worked every job I could find. But it wasn't enough. Iris looked at him quietly. I'm sorry. He shrugged. That's what started this. The saving. The dream of owning something. I wanted to build a life that didn't depend on anyone else. She smiled sadly. And then you ended up buying the most complicated dollar in the world. He laughed. Guess I did. She looked out across the dark fields. I lost my father. And my home. Everything I knew. I spent so long fighting to keep his name clean that I forgot how to live for anything else. Nolan turned toward her. You think it'll ever feel like home again? I don't know, she said, but it feels closer now. The next morning, a letter arrived by courier. It was from the judge, official confirmation. The gold claim was legitimate. The court would be moving forward, and the Maddox brothers had been ordered to appear. There were new charges, and there was something else. "We're being offered protection," Iris said, reading the paper aloud. "Until the trial. Deputies will patrol the area, but we're expected to stay on the property." Nolan nodded. "That's fine. I wasn't planning on going anywhere." They spent the rest of the day reinforcing the barn door, checking the locks, and setting up lanterns in case of night trouble. They weren't being paranoid. They were being smart. If the Maddox brothers sent more men, they needed to be ready. But as the sun dipped again, nothing came. Just crickets. Just whined through the grass. A week passed. Then another. One evening, while Nolan was checking the tool shed, Iris came running from the house, barefoot and holding a telegram. "It's from the sheriff," she said, breathless. "They've arrested Clay Maddox, one of the brothers. He was caught trying to bribe a court official." Nolan raised his eyebrows. "That's big." She nodded. "They're pressing charges. With him in custody, the others might fall." That night, they celebrated. Just the two of them. A meal on the porch, music from the old radio inside, the stars overhead. They didn't talk about the future much. Not yet. But Nolan noticed that Iris had stopped glancing over her shoulder, and he realized he wasn't dreaming about leaving anymore. The ranch didn't feel like a broken place he needed to fix. It felt like something worth protecting, something they could build, not just survive in. Still, Nolan couldn't ignore the feeling in his gut, like something unfinished was creeping closer. The Maddox family had money, power, a long reach, and quiet didn't last forever. The peace ended on a cold morning. Nolan had just finished loading firewood when he noticed the horses. Two of them, standing near the outer fence, unsaddled and tied to a post that hadn't been used in weeks. He stepped slowly toward the barn, his boots silent in the frost-covered grass. Something wasn't right. He hadn't heard them ride in, and the dogs hadn't barked. That meant whoever they were, they knew how to stay quiet. He reached the barn and found the door already open a few inches. His fingers tightened around the hammer on his belt. Inside, it was dark. He took one cautious step in and froze. A voice came from the shadows. "Don't bother reaching for it." Nolan turned slowly. Two men stood near the far wall. Strangers, but they had the look of hired guns. Dirty coats, tired eyes, guns resting just a little too comfortably at their sides. "You're trespassing," Nolan said, trying to keep his voice even. One of them smiled. "We're not here for you. We just need a word with the lady of the house." Nolan didn't move. "She's not here. We saw her light this morning," the other man said. "You sure you want to lie?" "You're not getting anything from her," Nolan said. The first man stepped forward. "Listen, friend, you seem like a good guy. Don't make this harder than it has to be. We leave with the papers, and no one gets hurt. I don't have the papers, but she does. And if you're smart, you'll bring her out here." Nolan didn't answer. Behind him, he could hear the wind picking up. The barn creaked. Then another voice cut through the cold. "She's not coming anywhere." It was Iris. She stood at the barn entrance, rifle in hand, calm as stone. Both men turned. One reached for his weapon, but stopped when he saw she already had hers raised. "Back away," she said. "Now." The first man frowned. "You really want to go down this road again, Miss Quaid?" "I'm tired of running," she said. "And I'm done being hunted." Nolan stepped closer to her, standing just behind her left side. Together, they made a wall. "You're surrounded," Nolan added. "Sheriff's been sending patrols every day. They're due any minute." It wasn't exactly true, but the men didn't know that. The two strangers hesitated. Then the first one lowered his hand. "This ain't over," he said. "It is for today," Iris replied. They turned and left, boots crunching on the cold dirt, horses snorting as they untied them. Once they were gone, Nolan shut the barn door and locked it. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, though her hands shook a little. "I didn't think I'd have to face them again this soon." "They won't stop," he said. "You know that." "I know," she whispered, "but I'm not scared anymore." They stood there in silence. For a moment, the cold didn't matter. The fear didn't win. Later, inside the house, they packed the documents again, sealed them in a strongbox, and hid it in a new place, somewhere even Nolan didn't know until she showed him. "We'll take them to the courthouse again," she said. First light. But Nolan knew something else was coming. And this time, it wouldn't be a warning. It would be the end, one way or another. The next morning, Nolan and Iris rose before dawn. The wind had changed. It carried a strange silence, like the world was holding its breath. They didn't talk much while loading the strongbox into the wagon. They didn't need to. Every glance between them said what words couldn't. By mid-morning, they were halfway to town, wheels creaking beneath them. Nolan kept one hand near the shotgun under the seat. Iris held the reins steady, eyes locked on the trail ahead. Just before the ridge, the trap sprang. 5 riders blocked the road. They wore black coats, wide hats, and cold eyes. One man at the front wore a silver ring that gleamed as he raised his hand. "You've made it hard, Miss Quaid," he called out. "But this is where it ends." Nolan stood slowly, shotgun in hand. "You've got no claim." "Don't care," the leader said. "The Maddox name doesn't answer to courts. You hand over the box, and we let you ride away." Iris stood too, strong despite the fear in her eyes. "You'll never stop, will you?" "No," he said simply, "because that gold belongs to us." "No," she replied, voice firm. "It belonged to my father, and it cost him his life." She climbed down from the wagon. Nolan followed her. He whispered, "We can't outgun 5 of them." "We won't have to," she whispered back. From behind the rocks above the ridge, rifles cocked. Sheriff Bennett stepped out first, his badge catching the morning light. Behind him, 3 deputies stood with weapons raised. "Drop them," the sheriff said. The riders hesitated. Then slowly, one by one, the guns fell to the dirt. Bennett walked down the hill, boots firm on the gravel. Clay Maddox gave up names in exchange for a deal. "We know everything now. The mine, the forged claims, even who paid Harper." The leader looked defeated. "They'll replace us." "Maybe," Bennett said, "but not today." Within minutes, the riders were disarmed and cuffed. Iris handed the strongbox to the sheriff herself. "You've done your part," he said gently. "Now, let us do ours." When it was over, Nolan and Iris returned to the ranch, just as the sun began to set. The wind was soft again, brushing over the tall grass like a hand smoothing wrinkles from a worn shirt. They sat on the porch, side by side. "It's really over?" she asked. "For now," he said. "But even if trouble comes again, we'll face it. Together." She turned to him, eyes steady. "I'm tired of surviving. I want to live. To build." "You're not alone anymore," he said. They didn't talk about gold or courts or the men they'd buried in the past. They talked about crops, about a new fence on the west side, about fixing the windmill before the dry season. As the stars came out, Iris leaned her head on his shoulder. "I used to think justice was about winning," she said. "But maybe it's just about being brave long enough to tell the truth." Nolan nodded, "And trusting someone enough to fight for it with you." They sat quietly, watching the sky. Moral: sometimes the land we protect ends up protecting us. And sometimes the family we lose is replaced by the one we build, with grit, with truth, and with someone who refuses to walk away.